Mhm.
All right, so everybody, thank you for tuning in. For those of you who clicked on this link, I really appreciate it. Please make sure you hit that like and subscribe button for me. It does help me out a ton, so I appreciate that for all of you guys who are doing that for me. So I have two guests today. They're with Integrate Sports Performance down in Lakeville, Minnesota, which is a suburb of the Minneapolis-St. Paul area. Dr. Alex Twenge and Megan Twenge. I know them from the University of North Dakota, where I played football. Megan played basketball. Alex played baseball. So I knew them from our time at UND, and now they are the owners of Integrate Sports Performance, where they do a lot of, correct me if I'm wrong, guys, but you kind of you mix sports performance with chiropractic, with PT, with functional movement. You're kind of a big blend of a lot of different areas in the fitness performance world. So I'll kind of let you guys take it away. Tell everybody how you got where you're at, where you started, what you got your degrees in, etc., and take it from there. So yeah.
Sure.
Cool.
Okay, well, thanks for having us. It's fun to be doing these little videos and getting ourselves out there and helping you guys out too. So yeah, I'm Megan. I went to UND, as you said. I'm an occupational therapist, actually, but I do a lot of what Alex said is more PT type stuff. But like you said, it's integrate. You know, we're integrating a lot of different things in our clinic because that's where you get the best results. You know, it sucks. You go to your chiropractor and then they're like, oh, go see your PT and then go to get a steroid injection, and just nothing feels conducive. So I think that's what sets us apart, and that's why we love what we do, and it's really fun. So far, so good.
Yeah, like you said, Dr. Alex Twenge went to the University of North Dakota, played baseball, got my chiropractic degree from Northwestern Health Sciences in Bloomington. From there, I worked at a clinic, and then this opportunity was presented. We got into this clinic thinking it would be one thing, and then all of a sudden, it just like took off and had its own shape, because we have such giving really good answers, like complete answers, versus just going, we'll just keep trying it and we'll see what happens. And it's we kind of, like you said, well, we're a blend of everything. I personally hate titles, so like don't care that I'm a doctor, don't care that I'm a chiropractor. I'm a clinician, I'm a physician. Like same with her, she's not really an occupational therapist, she's not really a physical therapist. Our goal of like establishing this was to give extremely high quality care that actually uses people's insurance, that like benefits them, versus going and you know this, we spent like segue into like how we met Will, besides all of us playing athletics, but we were always in the weight room, right? So it's like we learned so much from being around that, and then just like working with like Ben Bubbery and just a bunch of guys at UND, and it's like you take all this knowledge you have of like where you would like to be or where you would like to have been at a younger age, and you go, how do I take this and get rid of all the eyewash and give people, practice members, anybody, what they need, right? Because that's kind of what we do, I guess. Yeah.
Yeah.
So what's the population you guys typically work with? Is it high school athletes? Is it general pop? Or is it all over the place?
I would say all over the place, but people that are active.
Okay.
So like we treat like 40, 50-year-old people who are really big into CrossFit, have always been active. We're also involved with the high schools in the area. So we see a lot of those athletes, and now Olympic lifting is such a thing because there's actually like clubs and high schools are starting to do it, whereas we didn't have that when we were in high school. So having that weightlifting training background is really, really beneficial for us, because then we can teach that to our practice members, and especially kids that just like are really good athletes. There's raw athletes, you know, like we were, and you can get away with things for so long. So it's kind of fun just to teach like, okay, you're doing this now, let's retrain that and move a little bit better, so that when you are 50, you can still be doing CrossFit and still be super active and not have pain and, you know, all the same places we see all the time, you know, low back, traps, you get knee, ankle pain. So yeah, it's really an awesome, you know, we have really, really great people that we treat. It's been super fun. They actually do what I tell them to do. You know, it's like, hey, this is your exercise program. Like, do this stuff and you'll get better. And they come back and they're like, man, I feel so much better. And, you know, obviously that's the best part of our job is we care and we're actually helping people.
And then we work with a lot of like really high level power lifters too. So we kind of have a smattering of, it's more of, we definitely cater to the active person. Now, to say that we turn away anybody who's a general populace, anybody can learn how to move better, right? Like there is no one that moves perfect. No one, not in Western society, right? With all the repetitive stresses of sitting in front of a computer, cell phone, driving, like just anything, like you could even brushing your teeth, right? There are so many things that pollute us that it's like to get people just to move, like become knowledgeable about movement and what it takes to like Megan said, longevity, like make a body that's going to last versus a body that's viable now is like the biggest thing. Because perfect question for you, Will. If you had it your way, what would be the age you stopped training?
When I die.
Perfect. Exactly. Right. So it's like we have that same desire, right? Megan and I want to train at a high level for a very long time. Want to compete at whatever we're doing at a very high level for a very long time. Now, everybody only has so many bullets, right? Like you run out, like I see you're wearing one of those, you want to call it a whoop or a whoop, whatever it is. Right?
Yep.
Yeah. So we recommend that to like almost all of our athletes. And of course,
sorry,
go ahead.
Interject. But the biggest thing about like moving better is being aware of how you're moving.
Yes.
And what you should be feeling when you're doing a certain exercise. And it seems like silly, like my breathing, who cares? I do that all the time, you know, but it's like so important to be aware of what you're doing. And we're seeing that a lot with like the high schoolers, like the younger kids, they just have like no idea what's happening with their bodies, you know? So just like better.
You said, just athletes, just being athletes, right? Yeah.
So self-awareness and training that. But
regardless, I mean,
anyways,
tell me that isn't something that you've learned as you've come through.
Oh, yeah.
The intentional aspect of training is so big, right? Like the mental, like being able to like be cognizant of every single piece that it takes to do like a super solid clean. Like there are so many points, right? And reps for the sake of reps' sake don't really get us anywhere, right? Yet super high quality reps done well with rest and listening to what you have on your wrist, like how much you can send it each day, your heart rate variability, like your recovery score, how you're sleeping, your caloric intake, all that stuff. Our goal really is to be able to take all those pieces and actually make them viable, right? Like simplify it down because there's so many variables, right? So it's like, if we can teach, and I'm sure this is something that you do every day, like you fight the inner battle of like, okay, I have all this information of what I want to do. Here's what I should do. How do I bridge the gap?
Right. Yeah. Well, I have this inner meathead in me that just wants to do everything. I struggle with that battle all the time. Yeah. So what's really cool about both of you two is that you both played sports in college. So you have this training background. I know, like, I've been to rehab before for injuries when I was in college and high school. Most of the PTs and the chiropractors that I saw, at least it appeared that they didn't have much of a training background. I think that's starting to change. Is that kind of the feel that you're getting to?
It is. But continue if you want to finish your thought.
No, that's really just, is that kind of what you see too? No, I think it's great because obviously me, a meathead, I'm going to view things one way. A chiropractor is going to view things another way. A PT is going to view things one way. And I think if you have this, like the training background, you guys both like to clean, snatch, deadlift, all of that stuff. And then you have the training behind how the spine should move, what kyphosis is, what lordosis is, all of these things that, you know, how the body should integrate within itself to move efficiently. And I think it's cool that you guys, how old are you? Like 27, 28 years old? And yeah. And I think now we're seeing a lot more of that integration between PTs who have a training background, chiropractors who have a training background. I just think, is that kind of the feel that you're getting, and how important do you think that is for the profession?
Yeah, for sure. It's, I would say in general, it's definitely changing, I would say, well, and even strength training, even from when we started, right? So even when like 2011, 2012, 2013, like just the content that existed around what weight training was, what squatting was, what, it has evolved so much in the last decade. And luckily we've been around like in the pocket. Like we've been around when like just the ability to gain access to a weight room and train has grown so much, which is amazing. Now, yes, it is the culture of healthcare is definitely changing as far as like what we do. The big thing is being able to take and just like remove yourself from, what you do and then hold yourself to a higher standard, right? So like not just training or not just bodybuilding, not just doing Olympic lifting movements, but like striving to actually practice what you preach, like moving super well and taking the time to do it right versus just the sake of doing it. I think there's a huge disparity between that because anybody can do reps. Anyone can.
And that's the challenge I have as, the therapy side of things is, okay, do you understand why this is important?
Yeah.
Like, do you actually understand what I'm saying and why this matters? Because I can like teach you how to do a squat all day long, but if like you don't care, you don't see the merit in it, then I didn't do my job. Especially with these athletes, like we treat some really awesome athletes, even like these older power lifters. They're not older, but they're really
they're 40s and 50s and they still are like world
they
team master lifters. Like they're incredibly strong, 700 plus pound squatters at 43, 44, 45 years old. Right. So it's like, and
so like if I can't just pop down into a perfect optimal squat in front of these guys, they're going to be like, why would I listen?
Right. Exactly. The
whole,
everything we do is don't just talk the talk, like walk the walk, right? Like there's no way we would be able to treat these incredible athletes we have if we weren't in the fight with them. Like we are doing it with you. Like it's not just you training. We're also training. We're also like, for me, I was on that Austin's power podcast and he goes, what do you want to, like, why do you train the way you train? Like you're really training heavy. And I was like, well, yeah, my goal. The days I feel good. Yeah, right. When our body says we can, right? Well, it's like the goal is to be able to throw, to be able to be 45, be strong enough to like, if I want to stand underneath a basketball hoop and dunk, I can, right? And like be able to throw over 90 miles an hour for 2 decades. You get what I'm saying? So it's like, we try to put ourselves in the fight every day, just like they are, right? We don't try and be removed. Like we try and be removed enough to know, like to control our end of it. Well, we want to be part of it.
Yeah. And we're stronger now than we were in college, like training legit, every day. And now just from like figuring out like, oh, let's be a little more mindful of what we're doing, how we're feeling, it's like, which muscle should be doing this? It seems so basic, but it makes such a difference. And our numbers just keep like going up, up, up. So, I mean, that's fun.
That's
also, but
Megan grabbed room the other day at freaking 28. She was never even close to that in school.
At the bottom of the backboard.
Right. Still, but that's the point, right? Is like, as you age, regardless of how old you get, you should always be changing. There should never be a point where you go, I'm doing it right.
Yeah.
I'm good.
Right. Do either of you guys have a favorite, you're in the private sector, but do you have like a favorite sport? Like Megan, you played basketball, Alex, you played baseball. Megan, do you enjoy working with basketball players more? And Alex, do you enjoy working with baseball players more than other athletes?
I really love volleyball also. And so, I think for me, it's fun to work with like girls and women that are growing into women, just because I think they can connect with me a lot better than this like big hunk of meat over here. Yeah. And so that's fun, but I like working with the baseball players too. It's really fun to have a variety. Because
do you guys see common faults within specific sports? Like just that happen over and over and over again?
Like without fail.
And it's crazy how many kids like are coming in with low back pain, like over and over again. It's like, you're 14. Why are you having low back pain? That's crazy. Yeah. So yeah, for sure.
And like to that point, that's kind of what we get into it. Now for me, I love working with anybody who's motivated. I could give a freaking heck what you want to do or what your goal is. If your goal is to sit in a chair and you're fired up about it, that's going to fire me up. Like I'm all in, right? I love working with pitchers because pitching is such like, it's an art. There's an intricate, like to be really good at it, there's a ton of science to it, but at the same time, there's a ton of subjectivity and variability and it depends kind of thing. So pitching really intrigued me. Like if money wasn't an option, I could have my like my dream job. It would be a pitching coach with an organization somewhere doing it professionally.
Yeah. And like long-term goal for us, we've only talked about this, sprinkles here and there, but we just put in like all of our, like a squat rack and our plates and stuff in our clinic. So we're like, this is kind of awesome. Like eventually it'd be cool to be in like an actual gym setting where we still do our thing, but now we have training. I mean, whatever,
we have
options
like-minded,
are endless, but we can have
like-minded individuals like you who are people who are trying to like learn and like be intelligent with training versus just training, right? So that's the end goal. So I guess athlete wise, freaking
never ends.
Doesn't matter. If you're motivated and you want to be better, like I want to work with you.
Yeah.
So, all right. So as a strength coach, I guess my focus is more so on performance. And there's times where I'm like, this kid has like a faulty movement pattern, but that's his compensation is what allows him to perform. I'm not going to mess with it. He's got 4 years of college to perform the best he can. Screw it. Let him have this faulty movement pattern. If it's going to help him jump high, run fast, whatever. And then I think about baseball players. So Alex, is with your baseball background, pitchers especially. If you're a right-handed pitcher, you're probably going to have some asymmetries and all of that stuff. And so my question to you would be, do you have a fine line in which you think, all right, it's not worth allowing this asymmetry to keep going, even if the performance is continuing to improve? You know what I mean?
Right. And it's all about efficiency, right? Luckily, you're so blessed to be at a Division I university. You're working with such elite level athletes that are just incredible compensators, right?
But they're also young and malleable, right?
Yep.
So they'll pick up, and because they're athletes, if you try to train them something new, they'll pick up on it super quick.
Right. And that's where it's like, there is definitely a fine line between, because there are compensatory patterns that help us be athletic. Like there are, and no one will, and like I said, there will never be a single person that doesn't have a compensatory pattern of some type. A perfect person doesn't exist. The perfect spine doesn't exist. Perfect musculature, pulleys, right? The whole thing. There is a point though, where it's like, if you look at that athlete and you go, okay, we can't predict injury, right? Like we can't say that's an injury, right? Yet we can see indicators of possible kinetic chain breakdown. Whereas repetitive stress just adds up over time. You pull the scab off, pull the scab off, pull the scab off. Eventually you're going to bleed out, right? So there is a fine line. And I think as you start to work with more people, you'll be able to like look at someone and be like, okay, this they can get away with. Now, if we complement it with some very specific stuff on the back end to try and create a little more symmetry or a little more facilitation, then since you're working with athletes, the beautiful thing is they'll done. And they figure it out on your own. You just have to put them in a position to succeed. You get what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Go ahead.
A lot of the times it's just getting out of bilateral everything. Because everything is bilateral squat. You bench 2 arms, you deadlift 2 feet on the floor. It's just like getting out of that, because then you train those patterns where you can't even rotate, or you can't use one arm independent of your opposite leg. You can't. Your body just can't figure it out. So when we're in all these sports and we're all over the place and we're rotating and we're jumping and we're lateral and on one leg, sometimes like our body just can't sustain it and can't handle it. I guess. So
I get, and like to her point, I mean, when was like you played football at an extremely high level, right? Like when was it ever that you put both feet on the ground? Yeah. The exact same time. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Their training is their tools, right?
Yeah.
Like you said, right? Yet if we take a step back and look at what performance is, maybe we try and mimic it a little bit better. You know what I'm saying? Like we have a swimmer we work with who's like an Olympic level swimmer in the next year or two. And we try and mimic sport out of gravity in a controlled setting with contralateral bracing to create like symmetry.
Yeah.
Because that's going to create a very efficient swimmer versus if we just put her under a, you know, if we just put her, make her squat, or if we do something really, not that there's like, that's important to have that base level strength. Like, and she is, and that's what we're going to need to do with her. Realistically, she's just at a strength deficit to like be able to.
For her, she was like so inhibited that she wasn't using glutes, hamstrings. It was literally, I don't even know what she was using. She wasn't even using her lats.
She was being an athlete.
She's a backstroke. I don't understand how she's been doing it this far. But now we're just like doing a lot of glute hamstring activation, and it's like night and day. It's crazy.
And her times just keep slowly going
and she's
down.
very intelligent too, as you know, a high schooler. So that does help.
Does
she's very aware of what's going on.
Does that kind of your question?
Yeah, and it's funny because you just said she was being an athlete, like which kind of brings me. So I don't know if you guys are familiar with
it really does.
I don't know if you guys are familiar with Fergus Connolly and his book Game Changer or not.
Yeah.
But I'm currently reading it, and he kind of talks about how, you know, coaches, we don't really need to focus on so many details, and we kind of just we should just put athletes in situations and let them figure it out for themselves. And so, well, it just kind of when you said she's being an athlete, it just made me think about that. Like, give kids an environment, let them figure it out. Yeah. They might fail, and then they get that feedback. Oh, that didn't work. Let's try it again. They might fail again, get the feedback. Now they try a different strategy, and now they succeed, and then they refine that strategy towards more success. So, but with that swimmer, so are you guys training her and writing our programs for her?
Right. So here's the deal. So we a lot of what we do is just pure recovery base.
Okay.
A lot of it, like
for now,
high velocity,
at the
like
of treatment plans.
Tons of. We're basically taking this like we said. So this was a gal that was really inefficient in the pool, yet such an athlete that she was just making it happen. Right. She's laying down like smoking times, like 2 seconds behind. She's 2 seconds off being an Olympian at 17, which is unbelievable, right? And she's just laying down these times, and it's like we looked at her with the help of Ben, Bubba. We kind of like got together and we looked at her, and it was like she is unable to access certain pieces of like the kinetic chain, right? Like, so she's creating force, but it's not getting where it needs to get to. So it's like a light bulb in the ceiling can be on with 30% power, yet 70% of the power is lost from your breaker box to the light. So you're paying for 100% of the power, but you're only getting 30% of it. You know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. So it's like she's generating this huge amounts of force, and it's not getting to the distal extremity. It's not getting to the ends. So what we did is we literally took and we broke her down. So we wiped the motor pattern that existed, or at least some of it. You know, there's things that I shouldn't say we wiped the motor pattern. That's terrible term.
A lot of muscle work.
Yeah. We made her more pliable so that we could put her in different positions to in turn like
actually
recruit
access those muscles.
Right. Mm-hmm. So and like for us every day, we don't really program. The beauty of working with one athlete, she has a whoop, right? So when she comes in, we go, okay, what's your recovery story? How much have you done? What can we load you with today that you'll actually still recover from, instead of like, I'm at a 30% score. We should deadlift today, and like these huge central nervous system taxing movements. Yeah. And then we just keep like 1 step forward, 8 steps back. 1 step forward.
Don't get me wrong. I write down things that I'd like to do that day and try to plan. But if she comes in at like 38% recovered, we're going to be doing a lot more muscle work and do really light, maybe like banded stuff, like nothing crazy, and get her on the floor and just kind of start from scratch again and see if we can at least get something out of the session.
Right. And she's definitely, like we told you, she's definitely at a strength deficit. So we're just waiting. We're getting closer.
Like every single day.
Yeah, I was just about to ask that. How, like, is she swimming once a day or like twice a week? What, like, her frequency?
I mean,
it's just starting, like, usually they do like 3 hours a day and like some days off, and they're only doing an hour right now. So that's going to just keep going up, and then they're expected to do all these other weight training stuff and CrossFit and running, and I don't know how she does it, honestly.
Yeah.
So you never recover, right?
Yeah.
If you're
so
always
kind of our job is to turn her off and
a
kind
lot of
reset.
what we do, like we said, is super task based, right? Like you want to get better at swimming. Let's make you
hers is backstroke.
Yep. Let's make you a more efficient backstroker.
So we do a lot of like hollow holds, and have her like literally going like one arm behind and just like flutter kicking. Like, yeah. So.
Yeah. So yes, to answer your question, we do program to an extent, yet it's variable.
Yeah.
Super variable. Because it's like if you, I mean, tell me this. So let me run this scenario by you real quick. All right. Tell me, like every single UND football athlete that you work with or whoever all of them have one of those bracelets, right? Now you've written a general outline of certain percentage of recovery programs, right? Because like every athlete, so like bigger guys like us recover from larger movements quicker. There's more mass. We do a better job of like just like getting back to neutral. Whereas people who are longer and don't have as much mass don't recover as well because it's more taxing in the long run. They have to move the bar just as far as we do, yet they are missing 60 pounds of mass that we have. So like she's going to recover different than I will, than you will. So let's say like you have frameworks, right? And from, if you recovered, so you have a whoop band, you recovered from 15 to 30%. You're with this group, here's what we're doing today. You recovered 40% to 70%. You were with this group, here's what we're doing today. You recovered over 70%.
Nice.
Boom.
Let's hit the
we can send it.
weights,
like let's freaking let it fly. Like this is our day to tax it and just see what happens, right? Like tell me that wouldn't be an amazing situation.
Yeah. Oh yeah. I think I want to say University of Iowa used to have their whole football team on Whoop. I don't know if they do or not now, but that would be awesome if you could get an entire team.
Yeah.
Yeah. So all right. So here's a question that so you just mentioned how certain body types are going to respond to different types of stress differently, and probably more effectively with certain methods of training, maybe not, who knows really, I don't know, but
usually, yeah, you never know.
Yeah. Right. But so then that brings me to this question. So I work with primarily men's basketball, volleyball, tennis, and football. So my main two sports are basketball and volleyball. Taller, longer. Yeah, exactly. And so as I've done this, just the more I've kind of grown, I used to be, everything has to be Olympic based. Everything has to be squat, bench, deadlift, everything, you know what I mean? This kind of narrow, everyone does kind of the same thing. And
UND, so.
and it's not that I don't believe that stuff, those principles anymore, but
it's extremely, I mean, don't get us wrong. We love the barbell. Like these things are extremely important. Yet, continue.
Yeah. And so like I got guys on the basketball team who are 6'9", and I just questioned, should I have this guy snatch from the floor? And maybe the answer is yes. Maybe it's not. I don't know really. Like what? I mean, what are your thoughts on that kind of question? Like, does a certain athlete need to do different exercises? Yeah.
Yes. So it's like
we're learning that too. Yeah, even in our own training.
Yeah, as we get older, we're learning that, right? So it's like if you can't get into like a very efficient position, so like the dude who's 6'9", yes, it is important to be able to squat past 90 degrees, right? To be able to achieve full knee flexion, hip flexion, and find space. Yet, do we need to do that with a barbell on our back? Because then it's going to put him into a bunch of compensatory patterns, right? Because his lever length is so ridiculously long, whereas like it takes a long time to get into really good positions when you do that stuff, right? So does someone who's 6'9" need to snatch from the floor? It depends. Maybe someone who's 6'9"
the answer to everything.
Right.
It depends.
Yeah, seriously.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Right? So it's like someone who's 6'9" and just has like incredible positions, snatch from the floor. Someone who cannot get into a good position at all, hang, block, rack pull, something, right? Get the athlete, and that's what we found, like put them in a position to succeed, and then from there progress up and progress down. Progress up, progress down. It's kind of like, so like we got to train with a guy who trained at Westside when we first started like really getting into like thinking about this and being cognitive with like our approach, right? And so we got exposed to the conjugate method, right? Where it's like you work your weaknesses, right? So it's like you find your weak point, you work it for 4 weeks, and then you come back to it. You work it, and then you come back to it, right? And it's like what we learned from that mostly was wherever you're weak is probably where you don't move well. So find either the spot just below the range of motion where you suck and train up to that, and the spot just above it before you start to suck and train up to that. So it's like avoid that like huge compensatory movement under a large amount of stress. But if you can take them and put them in a goblet squat or like a counterbalance squat and have them squat full depth and it looks true and it's like a pretty squat, there's your full range of motion. You've trained it. You've created stimulus. Yet you've created even better, more efficient, like your output is going to be higher in the long run, training from a range of motion that is advantageous to the specific athlete than if you try and force them into positions that they can't achieve efficiently, right? And it's like I don't know if there's any research to back that, yet we've seen it time and time and time and time and time again.
Like there's a reason that we deadlift from blocks. We can still get in really good positions, and it's still hard and it's still heavy, but we're also still turning on all the right muscles, just like we would if we were doing it from the floor. So, I mean, it's still legit, even if we call it like cheater deadlifts or like box squats or like cheater squats.
And it's like for us,
but you're still getting all the same stimulus.
And like we're not going to compete in a powerlifting meet. I don't really have an interest to, right? We're training for the sake of being athletic. And it's like for us, we're more athletic 2 inches off the ground than we are on the floor. So put ourselves in a position to succeed. Now, to say that we do pull from the floor. We do. It's just not as heavy. And with a different rep scheme, or there's different bracing techniques, or we do like pauses, or we do long pulls, or like eccentrics. So it's the key. So yes, to answer your question, every single athlete depends. Every motor pattern depends. Every biomechanical makeup depends.
But that's your challenge, right? As
Especially,
a strength, it's like you have 50 guys that, okay, we're all coming in the weight room today. What do we do, right? And it's like, it's a challenge. I mean, I'm with you. As a therapist, it's way different because I can look at these details and go through little specific things and help them, move better in the way that I think would translate best to their sport. But that's easy for me because I just got one person or two people to look at. So
So I want to get into something pretty specific here. So probably 10, 15 minutes ago, I asked you if there's certain patterns or like if there's a pattern of compensation between that you see within certain athletes, like baseball players. What is the specific compensation pattern or specific asymmetries that you see with baseball players, and how do you address it?
So I won't even just say baseball players. Well, let's just say sub age 18 with a training history of 4 years, like group training history of 4 years, without just like at any type of like big box, like puppy mill training, right? I shouldn't say that. Not all of them are bad. Some are.
But a lot of people doing the same thing.
Right. You just like have a program, you do it. The biggest thing that we see is the classic, like super anterior tip pelvis, like lower, the dreaded lower cross, squat. Just inability to pelvic brace and create like independent movement of your hip from your low back or your shoulder from your rib cage, like being able to actually create separation and not instantly lift.
Orthotic.
Right. That's the thing we see most in youth athletes is we've taken and essentially turned our low back into our butt. So we don't extend at the actual acetabular, like the femoral head. We don't actually like create extension. This can't move. So then in turn, we use our low back and the whole thing just goes, and we just create extension there. So that's the most common thing we see in that age group. Now, specific to baseball players, biggest inhibitor 10 times out of 10 is deficient internal rotation due to inability to create scapulothoracic rhythm. So swing of the shoulder blade on the rib cage.
Against the rib cage, not getting that winging.
Yep.
You guys, I saw the video you guys made, post on Instagram about that.
Yeah, right. And so like that's the biggest one we see, and it's always that's an overhead athlete. Like volleyball players, guarantee you'll see it.
Yeah.
Like
Mhm.
100%. Now, the best part is like if you can create some space in that glenohumeral joint and then teach scapular like elevation and upward rotation
without compensating with your traps.
Right. You will see like it is instant. Like it is crazy how well it works because it's because your body goes, oh,
this feels right.
That felt really good versus me being and doing that all the time. So that's in overhead athletes who are
shoulder impingement.
Yep. Overhead athletes who are unilateral dominant. It is 100% deficit rotation causing lack of scapulothoracic rhythm. Yeah.
So what are the things that you would prescribe for someone to improve that?
First things first, breathe. Like
everything starts with diaphragm breathing.
Yeah.
And I've seen you looking into this too. So you have
like Wim Hof, Ruska, like
that stuff. You have to start, literally we start on our back on the floor and we do diaphragm breathing into a hip bridge, basically what it is. So turning on internal obliques, transverse abdominis, hamstrings in more of a posteriorly tilted pelvis so that we can turn off the erectors and QLs. So that's everything starts.
And what that does is that keeps your ribs internally rotated, which allows your shoulder blade to move. So that's the first thing. It's like learn how to not be a chest breather. Like just learn how to brace. The second thing is always there's always going to be adhesion, and like using a lacrosse ball or something like that doesn't like get rid of adhesion, yet it creates a neurological stimulus that tells, hey, this is a problem. So like long head tricep, infraspinatus, teres minor, where they all kind of cross. So like it's, glenohumeral head, and it's like long head tricep goes here, and then the other two cross. And it's that open space that's kind of between your humerus and your shoulder blades. This like
right here.
And you start working that, and you will find like gross, nasty tissue in there. And then the last part is, I think, do we invite you to like that? Our private page.
He's in there.
Yeah. So that 2-part row where all it is like it's just a kneeling. That one is huge, because if you can take that and then translate it to actually like sport, so feeling like scapular cocked, like cocking the arm back and feeling load, and then like for a volleyball player is going to be up and through, whereas a baseball player is going to be up and down. That's huge because that teaches swing. Against resistance, which is even better. It's against load.
Well, even just against the wall, like figuring out how to use serratus and lat.
Yeah, so those three things.
And feel your shoulder blade actually on your rib.
Breathing, mobilization of the posterior cuff. You always have to look at the anterior, like
pecs
the pec and everything
always
too.
tight. Not everybody. Just
you can always hammer those. I mean, that like how often are you working on yours just for the sake of people move better, right?
Because he's benching like 800 pounds.
So. Yeah, totally. But that, and then just like feeling like a row under load, or a row like even just like
some
a scap
resistance.
push up, anything to stay out of your traps and actually use like your serratus and your lats to just like
and just
create
doing
space.
a push up the right way.
Yeah.
Is a whole nother thing.
So those are the three things for like baseball player specific, volleyball, like any overhead athlete. So like if you have a thrower, like a javelin, I mean, even shot put, you'd probably be able to find shot put's more of a tricep movement, so probably not.
But still, even basketball, like shooting is, it's like everybody needs it, especially with this society these days.
Yeah.
And would you recommend doing these things for someone who isn't demonstrating any issues, just as a, I guess, prehab, to prevent it from,
we can always, there's always something to be done, right? Like even pain or
it's
like
a bad indicator.
It's like by the time you hit pain, there's something that's been like moving, like functioning as something else, or like adhesed, or
wrongly,
you haven't been eliciting the right response for a while. So it's like, if we can do a good job of staying ahead of that stuff, where it's like we're actually taking care of our bodies and like doing, like learning how to breathe is never going to hurt somebody. Learning how to open up your pec and the back of your shoulder is never going to hurt someone. Learning how to use your serratus for any single person in the world, doesn't matter who you are, if you sit in front of a desk or if you go run 90 miles every weekend, it's never going to hurt. Like those are three things that like anybody can use.
Yeah. And that's just upper body.
Right. So that's what we see a lot with, and like those, those are three things that are just, it's like, they make a huge difference just day-to-day life.
Yep.
Yeah. So kind of last question here. I don't want to take up too much more of your time, but I want to get both of your guys' opinions on this. So talking about compensation patterns, faulty movements, etc. If you see an athlete who is demonstrating these bad movement patterns and you think that they need to do some of these correctives, these prehab exercises to improve it, for example, let's just say squatting. And they're squatting and they're shifting to the left on their way down, and they're shifting back to the middle on their way up. More than likely, there's probably some issue down the chain, ankle, knee, hip, somewhere.
Right.
As you're addressing these issues with your correctives and your mobility techniques and all that, would you strip squatting from them and wait till you fix the, whether it's a tissue problem, a neurological problem, or would you allow them to keep squatting and hopefully it kind of gets better as they are performing these correctives and these other techniques to improve it? You know what I mean? Does that question make sense?
No, yeah.
Yeah.
Do you want me to read
I
off, or
think
you
we
want
would
to read
have
off?
the same answer, I think. I don't care, whatever you want to do.
So I'll go first. So we are the last people to ever tell someone stop. Like, we would never be like, nope, don't do that. We would be like, let's just be more conscious, like feel it, like get under. And it's not so much that we use like corrective exercise, because like any exercise, if done correctly, is a corrective exercise, right? So it's like squatting is a corrective exercise done right? Or like unilateral. I mean, none of it's really like corrective, and we would never ever, like, unless someone's like really screwed up, like we have one.
I feel like you really can't do it, then obviously probably not going to be good for you to keep doing it.
But if, as you learn to feel things, and as you become more pliable, and as you do more unilateral work, and as you create like more balance, things work. Like we said, put yourself in a position to succeed and let your body find the space, and it will succeed.
And we do have a very fluid progression of what we do with people. It's not to say it's like, oh, that looks horrible, just keep doing that, you know? Like, honestly, I could take tops 20 minutes to go through what I expect you to be doing for optimal positioning in a squat. It does not take very long. And then back to kind of what Alex is saying, is then once they know those pieces and understand what they should be trying to achieve, then yes, of course, continue squatting. A lot of the times I'll say, let's do box squats for this week or for 2 weeks, whatever, and then come back and we'll reassess how things are going, if you're picking up on the things we've been teaching or not, or if your body, maybe we need, like you said, more tissue work just to even get into the right position. And
so like, that's our big thing. Like we talked about it with every athlete, it depends, right? So if someone is unsuccessful, like the shift is apparent from, you know, a certain number of knee flexion to another certain number of knee flexion, right? Train to where we know we build good tension and we're bilaterally relatively even and we brace well, and like we can create like a really fluid, like nice looking squat, and then slowly work down, right? And like just get into it. And there's a lot of studies, and now I wish I had this pulled, like I need to look up this paper again. There are some studies that say like within 10 to 15 degrees of every range of motion of like, that's achievable, right? So like I don't have 10 to 15 more degrees of extension, so I don't have strength there. Yet there's studies that say you have relative strength within those ranges of motion outside of where you train. There are studies that say that. I need to look up the paper again because that's the second time I've quoted it, and I don't know. Regardless, it's one of those things like we talked about. Don't take things away from people. Just put them in better positions to succeed and let them continue living their lives, right? Athlete, person, kid, grandpa, grandma, and like, because that's the easiest way to learn, right? Is you have to do to learn. You can't, like we said, there's a reason we train. Like,
try it out.
You have to know what it's like to have, you know, you have to know what it's like to have well over 500 pounds in your hands, or, you know, well over 400 pounds on your back to be able, or like, you know, in her case, like deadlift well over 300, and like, you know, do these things because it puts you, you know what it feels like. You've been put in that position and you're like, I know what it's like to get buried like that. I know what it's like to have a huge hip shift. I know what it's like to have tendonitis. I know what it's like to have like my ankles feel like they're going to pop in half, you know?
Yeah. And this all comes again back to your awareness and mindfulness of what your body's doing. And as the therapist, my biggest challenge is teaching that. And that takes time. So I'm not going to be like, you know, he's kind of on the other side of this than I am, just because I think it would be great to kind of backtrack, learn how to move a little better, you know, work your way up to it, not necessarily say stop everything, but it is frustrating when I'm like, God, that guy, he's still pushing back and using his erectors to do that squat, and he's not even using his glutes, you know? So like, it still kind of drives me nuts, because I'm like, we've talked about this, you know? But to his point, it is good to keep, you know, doing that, as long as they can like go back. All these kids are taking videos of themselves these days. So let's go back and look at this. Like, what did you feel? And, you know, what do you think we could do better next time?
Yeah. And sorry, I do have one more question.
Okay.
So what is your ultimate goal with Integrate? Where do you see yourselves in 5 years, 10 years? How many different types of people do you want to reach out to? All of that. What do you want to achieve with Integrate when you're 60 years old and ready to retire?
Yeah. I don't know.
We've talked about it. Obviously, we're like 4 months into our business.
Right.
Yeah.
And it would be cool. We've thought about, you know, how I mentioned earlier, like doing this big gym and having, you know, training and strength and conditioning and
really being able to control like all the variables and like produce a really like elite level product. Cause that's like something, tell me you wouldn't have killed for that when you were 18, 17, right? That's one iteration that
we could open multiple smaller clinics in the area and then grow from there, and then have, you know, more training and education for other practitioners to do what we do as well as we do it.
Yeah. And that's the hard part, is like, it would be,
it's tough.
It's tough to find people who care enough to want to know, to like put in the extra work to like we get done at the end of the day most of the time and we are freaking exhausted, because it's like, we're doing a lot. Like, it's not just like, I'm not just adjusting, like it's tons of muscle work. It's tons of information. It's like, we are mentally engaged with every person, but we care so much that it's like, I wouldn't do it. I wouldn't do it any other way.
You know, so excited to go to work the next day.
Yeah, I wouldn't do it any other way. And that's, so there's a lot of iterations that could work. The biggest thing is just making, like, I think if I could say, like, in 5 years, we look back and we go, we did a good job of impacting these lives. We helped those freaking people do what, and they're succeeding.
Yeah.
And that's,
people in Lakeville are moving way better than the other cities.
So I think that would be the big thing. I don't really care what it looks like or what we're doing, just as long as like, we want to keep learning and trying new things. And, you know, it's never, oh, this worked that month, so we'll do that for forever. You know, we're always trying to, and like continue to just challenge ourselves, just get better, just freaking every day, like find a way to get better, because if you're not getting better, you are stagnant.
Yeah. Well, I think you guys should keep putting out as much content as possible. I like watching it. Like I said before we kind of started this recording, is I don't think there's anything cooler than just putting your thoughts out there and putting content out there and letting people kind of judge for themselves. I mean, more voices, the better. I like seeing things from all different views. And if I see something that I don't like, or I think is dumb, or I disagree with, it's good that I saw it, because I know I don't like it. And then same thing, like I want to put as much content or my thoughts out there for people to judge for themselves. And if people like it, awesome, then I'm doing a good job. If not, maybe I'm still doing a good job. I'm just not reaching the audience that I need. So,
you know, like too. Yeah. You know, it's like shooting videos is not a skill we had. Like, that is something that was very awkward for me. He was doing it before at his other job, but I was like, no, I don't want to ever don't look at me.
Because you gotta.
It takes some courage.
Put yourself out there and just freaking let it fly. Because it's like, if you know what you're doing is making a positive impact on people, why would you hold that to yourself?
Yeah. And I've even had some people like message me saying, hey, I disagree with this video at this reason. And I think that's all, like, I'm really happy, because then I learn from them too. So Yeah, I keep putting stuff out there. For anyone who is listening, Integrate Performance, they are on Instagram and Facebook. Do you guys have a Twitter?
We do. There's nothing on there though.
Okay. Yeah.
It's a hard platform to really like navigate. So
yeah. Well, I'll put all of your guys' social media stuff when I post this for people to check out. I recommend everyone checking it out. They put a lot of cool videos. They're like 3-minute videos, 4-minute videos. Really easy to watch when you're scrolling through Instagram, sitting on the couch watching
Take
TV.
a couple minutes, learn something.
So,
for God's sakes.
yeah. So,
Thanks,
yeah, no, I truly appreciate you guys doing this, taking the time to talk to me about what you guys are doing, why you're doing it, how you're doing it. So, yeah, thank you so much for coming on. I had a blast talking to you guys, and maybe we'll do it again in 6 months, a year, 2 years, who knows?
Sure.
I appreciate it, guys. Really do.
Thanks, man.
Yeah, of course. Go Sue.
See you later, buddy.
Take care, guys.